The next thing that we will discuss is about the Queueable Apex, right? So we have seen future method. Future method, as I said, is the most basic form of asynchronous Apex. Slightly advanced as compared to future method is Queueable Apex. Now, Queueable Apex is, it does pretty much what a future method does, but in an enhanced way. So it is, if I say that Queueable Apex is an enhanced version of future method, it may not be wrong. So initially, Salesforce had future method, and then they introduced Queueable Apex, right? And Queueable Apex, in fact, as I said, does the same thing. So core purpose can be similar or same, but in addition to what a future method does, Queueable Apex has got a few more attributes which are helpful or handy where, for you to work with different scenarios, or in different kind of with different kind of requirements, etc. Right? So how does this work? So Queueable Apex actually works with an interface which is called Queueable interface. So already we have an interface called Queueable interface. So when you're writing a Queueable Apex, you use that interface. So you implement that Queueable interface, right, for your Queueable Apex. Now with the Queueable interface, so there is this interface called Queueable interface, which is implemented on Queueable Apex. Now what does this do? This interface enables you to add jobs to the queue and monitor them. So what is basically the core functionality of this interface? This interface allows you to add job to the job queue, and it also allows you to monitor the job. So basically, eventually, a code which implements this interface can be queued, can be put into the job queue, and putting it into the job queue ideally means it will be in the queue, it will wait for the system resources to become available, and once the system resources are available, then it will get executed. Correct? Now, this is the key thing. In a way, this is an enhanced way of running asynchronous Apex compared to your future method. So pretty much the same stuff it is doing, but in a slightly more advanced or enhanced way. So your long running Apex code can be queued by implementing the Queueable interface. So if you have an Apex code and if you are implementing the Queueable interface, you will have the ability to queue the Apex code, and it also has the ability to be added to the Apex job queue. All right. Now, we will have a quick look at the syntax for this. Okay. The syntax for Queueable Apex is slightly different, okay, as compared to future method. So future method was just a method, and all that you had to do, you had to simply use the add future annotation before that method. In Queueable Apex, you define it as a class because you'll have to implement the Queueable interface. So you define it as a class, and the syntax is like this. So you define a class, you can just name your class whatever you want. I've named it like this. You'll have to implement the Queueable interface. Let me use some other color, maybe. Yeah. You'll have to implement the Queueable interface, right? And inside that class, you just need to define one method, which will be a void method. So you define one void method. This is the method. It's a void method. And name of this method has to be execute. Okay, so this is how it works, right? So this is going to be your syntax. So you define the method inside a class. That class should implement Queueable interface, and the name of the method has to be execute, and it has to be a void method. And then your code logic can come here. So whatever code block you have, I've just put a sample code here, but whatever code you want to execute, that code can be put here. Okay, so now how are you defining a Queueable Apex? You define a class, you implement the Queueable interface. Inside that class, you define a method which has to be a void method, and the name of the method has to be execute. Inside that method, you go and define your code block, whatever you want to execute. All right. Now, once you have written the code, the next point is how would you put the code into the job queue? For future method, it was slightly different. It was a method, so the method can be called. Now, for this particular Queueable Apex, since it's written inside a class, you have to put this code into the job queue, right? So we are not calling the method directly. So what we are doing, we are basically putting this Queueable Apex into the job queue. So as I said, the advantage of using Queueable interface is that it lets you put your Apex code into the job queue. And how do we do that? So we do that using this predefined function which is system.enqueueJob. Okay, and here you will put the name of your Queueable interface, Queueable class, Apex class, right? So that is the thing. So this is a predefined method, system.enqueueJob. This is used for putting an Queueable Apex into the job queue, right? So once you call this, once you call this function, it will put our asynchronous Apex example or whatever the your Queueable Apex class into the job queue, and it will again behave pretty much the same way a future method would have behaved. It will wait in the job queue for system resources to become available, and once the system resources are available, it will get executed. All right. So there is no again particular time for it. It can get executed in 2 minutes. It can get executed in 30 minutes, depending on how busy your overall Apex execution is, on your system. Right now, the advantage of using Queueable Apex is that once you put this, it returns a job ID which is of type ID. Okay, so each job which is put in the job queue will have a unique job ID, and now this job ID can be used for monitoring the progress of the job. That was not the case with a future method. So for future method, we did not have a job ID sort of a concept. For that reason, it was not possible for us to retrieve the status or the progress of that particular operation. However, with Queueable Apex, this is an advantage. You get the job ID. So like here we have retrieved the job ID. Now what we can do, we can query the information about this operation using the job ID, and for that we just have to write a query. So we can write a SOQL query on this object. So there is this object async apex job. So async apex job is the object which contains complete list of all the apex jobs which are running, right? So all that you have to do, you simply have to write a query using the job ID. So if you see on this particular object, async apex job object, you can write the query and you will be able to retrieve the information, right? So the advantage that we are getting, the big advantage that we are getting with Queueable Apex, we are getting a job ID, a unique job ID, which helps us monitor or track the progress of the Queueable Apex, right? Or the the actual asynchronous Apex code which was getting executed, right? So that is the thing.